Welcome to another Opening Doors unit. Remember, we are exploring quality text to quality writing journeys, and we're all about curiosity, puzzlement, language learning about great writers. You can see and get more information on an introduction, which is at the beginning of the Door in the Wall unit. That's the H.G. Wells one at the start of all the Opening Doors videos. So this one is about Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, a very, very famous story indeed. And let's get going. Once upon a time, there was a family called the March family growing up in Concord, Massachusetts around 1868. So Louisa May based this story around her own family, very much so. There are all sorts of links you can find with her and her sisters and the family and the backdrop to the American Civil War. And we're going to be homing in on an extract in a minute to try to explore writing tension. And how does tension build as we read? We think Louisa May has got some tips for us here. And we hope that you will take a closer look at this picture of a schoolroom, because it's going to be a schoolroom scene. Let's question, let's explore, let's get curious. How would you describe this schoolroom? Is it similar to or different from yours? Does the scene remind you of any other stories you've read set in classrooms? Why not pause for a moment and discuss that? Take a good look at the picture. Differences, similarities. As I've said, it's a famous story, and Louisa May based so much of it on what she saw around her. Her family were educational idealists. There were an awful lot of visiting writers, a lot of talk, a lot of ideas, and she really, really wanted to write just like Jo in Little Women. The family were very poor and hit all sorts of problems, and eventually, when her ambitions were realised and Little Women began to do very well, she was able to help the family and fund the family. She'd done all sorts of things before the writing took off: household servant, a teacher, even briefly a nurse in the American Civil War. Louisa May's story is as interesting as the books she wrote, and she would never have imagined the breadth, the scope, the popularity and the fame of her story. So many film versions. There's one recently, and many from the past have, I think, helped to embed the popularity of the story right across the world. I know particularly in America, but it's very well known, and there are reasons. Here's the context I've chosen. Let's zoom in. Amy March has taken some pickled limes into school. However, sucking them has become such a craze that the teacher, Mr. Davis, has banned them. Amy owes limes to other girls and is planning to pay them back. However, a rival pupil, Jenny Snow, gives away the presents of her limes, and Amy must face the consequences. Well, you might not think it's such a terrible thing to be sucking limes, but believe you me, it was in 1868 in Concord, Massachusetts. I'll read this passage to you. It was a most unfortunate moment for denouncing Amy, and Jenny knew it. Mr. Davis had evidently taken his coffee too strong that morning. There was an east wind which always affected his neuralgia, and his pupils had not done him the credit which he felt he deserved. Therefore, to use the expressive if not elegant language of a schoolgirl, he was as nervous as a witch and as cross as a bear. The word limes was like fire to powder. His yellow face flushed, and he rapped on his desk with an energy which made Jenny skip to her seat with unusual rapidity. "Young ladies, attention if you please." At the stern order the buzz ceased, and 50 pairs of blue, black, grey and brown eyes were obediently fixed upon his awful countenance. "Miss March, come to the desk." Oh dear. Well, we can feel Amy's rising anxiety, but we can feel the rising anxiety of the teacher too. That's what's so clever. Rising tension. Take a look at my colours. And this is a thinking engine we use a lot in opening doors. Thinking engines just help you to focus, to work through ideas, and to engage and get closer and closer to the language, the sounds, the words, and the feelings as they go into your mind and as you read the text. Noticed in red. That's just anything at all that you find interesting. Noted in blue. Why don't you prioritize? What mattered the most to you? Just one or two things. Not sure are the questions, the puzzlements, the curiosities. I think in some ways it's the most important column. I've made a little start for you there with saying too strong. I noticed that when I first read this passage because I thought of the difference between just saying that somebody had had coffee and actually adding too strong. What difference does that make? How has that affected his mood? Under the blue, noted. I loved that direct speech that suddenly Louisa May introduced into the writing. Young ladies, attention if you please. And if you please is an important phrase. Something assertive, but asserting maybe not quite successfully, a sense of rising panic a little bit. And the not sure, I'd like to explore further what neuralgia is. And the yellow face flushing, so yellow and red. Rising adrenaline again. There's some help from me, but why not pause now? There's so much more. That's a rich passage. We always choose rich passages to explore. Why not make your own noticed, noted, not sure chart? It's got to be time to write. There's nothing like it. You've read something, you've enjoyed it, you've explored it, you've learnt about language, you've thought about aspects of English that you've learnt before that are coming up again. It might be similes there. It might be imperatives, commands. Whatever's gone on in your session now, you can apply. Focus on a nervous person. It could be someone in a queue, on a train, at school, or someone about to do something difficult. Zoom in. Imagine the zoom lens on a camera. In less than 100 words, capture the tension. Go for the close-up. Think about the detail of Mr. Davis. It's so much better writing because we know about the human side of the teacher. Pause again. Go for it. 100 words. Enjoy. Well, I hope that was terrific, and I'm sure you've got something there to build on and actually take further. And why not read more too? In opening doors, we call it link reading, trying to link the reading in with the curriculum, trying to link full text reading which complements the extract. So the extract's just another open door into amazing books, famous books like To Sir with Love. The Demon Headmaster has been around for years, very, very popular. And of course, Matilda. What about sections from Dickens? Why not, I'd say. For older ones, Kes and Cider with Rosie and Picnic at Hanging Rock. Holes is incredibly popular, as well as Harry Potter, and the very famous Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, again for the slightly older ones. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry is an absolute classic. And of course, Louisa May Alcott's written lots of other books. Might be time to try now, might be you want to wait for the full text until you're a little bit older. Up to you. Main thing is reading for pleasure and enjoying all these passages. Why not predict the development of the scene? Come on. It's got to be something that really, really will interest you, I'm sure. I know when I first read this passage, it really interested me. What's going to happen? Is Amy going to escape punishment? What kind of punishment? What's going to happen next? Over to you. Pause. Predict. And here it is. Ultimately, you will learn the most by taking in the beautiful flow of drama, language and tension that Louisa May offers to us. What will happen to Amy? I'll read it to you. Amy rose to comply with outward composure, but a secret fear oppressed her, for the limes weighed upon her conscience. Bring with you the limes you have in your desk, was the unexpected command which arrested her before she got out of her seat. A little bit more happens there in the book that I'm telling you in the brackets. Mr. Davis insists that Amy throws the limes out of the window 2 by 2. As Amy returned from her last trip, Mr. Davis gave a portentous hum and said in his most impressive manner, "Young ladies, you remember what I said to you a week ago? I'm sorry this has happened, but I never allow my rules to be infringed, and I never break my word. Miss March, hold out your hand." Amy started and put both hands behind her, turning on him an imploring look which pleaded for her better than the words she could not utter. She was rather a favourite with old Davis, as of course he was called, and it's my private belief that he would have broken his word if the indignation of one irrepressible young lady had not found vent in a hiss. That hiss, faint as it was, irritated the irascible gentleman and sealed the culprit's fate. "Your hand, Miss March," was the only answer her mute appeal received, and too proud to cry or beseech, Amy set her teeth, threw back her head defiantly, and bore without flinching several tingling blows on her little palm. They were neither many nor heavy, but that made no difference to her. For the first time in her life she had been struck, and the disgrace in her eyes was as deep as if he had knocked her down. Oh, poor Amy. And in some ways, poor Mr. Davis. Am I being cruel saying that? But he didn't really want to do it, but the rules of the time suggested he had to, and we can read about particular circumstances there pushing him in that direction. You've got two human beings there, and the tension rises. Why not apply another? Noticed, noted, not sure, and you will learn much more. I'll just mention that word disgrace at the end. I think that's really important. The disgrace of it is what lingers in Amy's mind. The language study, the technique, the figures of speech, do you know they must all connect with some kind of emotional response? And when they do, we'll tend to remember that story, that passage, that poem for the rest of our lives. And the writing is going to be really enjoyable. A favourite of mine of these titles is writing Jenny Snow's version of events, but trying to capture the same style. You might like to do that. Or perhaps think about your worst day at school, but all the time applying the building of tension. You've learnt from a great writer. Now apply what you've learnt and enjoy, and you'll find, I'm sure, that you write some of your best work ever, and you'll know it and you'll be proud. Do you know what? I always think before you actually write, it's just worth reflecting. What have you learnt from Louisa May Alcott? It could be some of the things that I've put on the slide there. What about that close-up on Mr. Davis? Is that something you'd like to imitate and perhaps make really fascinating in your own original way? How was that direct speech used? Is that something you could add to your repertoire of writing? And perhaps most important of all, there's that narrative build, isn't there? As I read it, I hope you were wondering, what's going to happen next? That needs very careful wordplay, and that's going to need drafting and editing and proofreading, all the things you often do in class. They're important. Gradually you can refine your writing, but still let that pen flow. So there's a few things there from a great writer, and that will help you when you're picking a title. Remember, there are 5 books in the Opening Doors series, 80 units going across them. And remember too, we love to get your work. Please send me your work, and do look at the Crown House Publishers site where we post some of it, and you'll find fantastic children's work across those 80 units. Hope you've enjoyed this unit, and I hope you'll try one of the others. Thank you.